I saw an ad in the paper about a house-sitting job, and honestly, I could use the cash. I didn't know anything about the neighborhood at the time, hadn't even heard the latest news about the disappearances, but the job seemed easy enough. All I had to do was look after some guy's house while he was away. I figured it would be a quick way to earn some money and unwind for a night. I found the place in a neighborhood I'd never been to before. As soon as I arrived, a chill ran down my spine. There was something about the place that felt wrong. Maybe it was the overgrown lawns or the stillness in the air, but whatever it was, I couldn't shake the feeling that I didn't belong here. As I walked down the sidewalk, trying to shake off the unease, I saw a neighbor by his mailbox. He was pulling a package out of it, and I figured he might know where Maxim's house was, since I couldn't remember which one it was. "Hey, excuse me," I called out, approaching him. The man turned to face me.
"Oh, hi. Can I help you?"
"I'm looking for Maxim's place. He hired me to house sit." The man raised an eyebrow.
"Maxim, huh? That's strange. He usually asks me to watch his house. Never paid anyone else for that."
His tone was confused, and that didn't help the knot in my stomach. "I'm not sure, but that's what he hired me for. I just need the address."
"Oh, okay. Well, it's after Solar's place,"
he said, pointing to the house next door.
"If you're house sitting, I'd take a closer look at the place. Some weird stuff's been going on around here lately."
Great. More unease to add to the pile. I thanked him and walked toward Maxim's house. The street felt too quiet, and I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was watching me. When I finally reached the house, I found the keys hidden where the note said they would be inside a flower pot in the backyard. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Immediately, the lights flicked on, motion sensors kicking in. It was a nice house, and I began to relax, telling myself this would just be a quiet night. I grabbed a snack from the fridge and checked the note left by Maxim. "Thanks for house sitting. Please do these things. Check the mailbox. Water the plants. Take out the trash. Great. Chores." Not what I was expecting, but I figured I could get them done quickly. Still, as I walked through the house, I noticed something odd. One of the rooms was locked and off limits. Why? What was in there? I decided to put it out of my mind and get to work. I went to the mailbox first. Inside was a missing person flyer. Kim Carlson, 25, went missing just a few days ago, on September 23rd. I didn't recognize the name, but it sent a shiver through me. This was one of many disappearances that had been happening around the neighborhood, according to the news. As I took the flyer back inside, I couldn't ignore the feeling of being watched. I tried to brush it off, convincing myself it was just nerves. But then something caught my eye. I noticed something strange in the trash, large bones sticking out. My heart skipped a beat. I quickly dropped the bag, my hands trembling as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. Bones. From an animal? But why were they in the trash? Trying to calm myself, I told myself it was nothing, just a mistake, maybe leftover from something that was thrown out earlier. But when I opened the door to toss the bag outside, I froze. Standing right there was a figure, a man in a black suit, his face obscured by shadows. My heart raced. "You scared the hell out of me. Who are you?" I shouted, my voice shaky.
"I'm Agent Reno, Federal Investigation Bureau. I need to ask you a few questions."
He replied, his tone serious, almost eerie. He asked if I'd noticed anything strange. Had I seen anything weird? I had to admit, I felt a little rattled, but I told him there was nothing out of the ordinary. Everything just felt off. but I couldn't say exactly why. He seemed to buy it, nodded, and left. But as soon as I closed the door behind him, I saw something out of the corner of my eye, a figure standing outside the window, clapping its hands. My blood ran cold. The lights went out. I rushed inside to check the lights, convinced it had to be some kind of malfunction. But when I clapped my hands, the light stayed off. I walked into the kitchen and noticed that all the food in the fridge was gone. Every last bit. That's when the door upstairs, the one that was off limits, fell open. I didn't know what was going on, but something was terribly wrong. My gut screamed at me to leave, but I didn't want to make a scene. I couldn't make sense of anything. I tried to ignore the sinking feeling in my stomach and went to bed, hoping sleep would make everything go away. But sleep didn't come easily. A loud bang woke me up a few hours later. My eyes shot open, and I glanced to my left, hoping to shake off whatever nightmare had interrupted my sleep. But there, standing in the doorway, was a figure. It was tall, unnaturally tall. Its entire body was black, blending with the shadows like it wasn't even part of the world. The only color that stood out was its face, red. A deep blood red, with wrinkles that looked like those of an old man. The skin sagged around its eyes, hollow and sunken. It stared at me. The instant it realized I saw it, the door slammed shut. I froze, my body locked in terror. My pulse thundered in my ears, deafening against the eerie silence of the room. I felt like I couldn't breathe. The air was thick, heavy with dread. The lights flickered once, twice, and then, just as I thought they would steady, they died. Everything plunged into darkness. I couldn't see my own hands, but I could feel them shaking uncontrollably. I had to do something. I had to make it stop. I clapped once. It felt like the loudest sound in the world. A desperate plea to return some normalcy, to break the silence. I didn't care. I just wanted the lights back on. And when they flickered to life, my heart nearly stopped. There, in the doorway of the opposite room, stood the figure again. But this time, it was different, more real. I could see it clearly now. It was tall, too tall to be a person, and so unnaturally lanky that it seemed like it would snap in half with the slightest movement. Its body was pure black, like an absence of light itself, yet its face. That face was glowing red, illuminated in the dim light, all wrinkled and ancient, like some monstrous, cursed old man. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. The figure just stared at me. And then, without warning, it vanished. Gone. Like smoke evaporating into the air. 1 second it was there, and the next it was nothing. I was left standing in silence, my mind scrambling to process what I had just seen. My heart was racing, my breath coming in ragged gasps. But then, in the quiet of the room, I heard it. A sound. Low, almost like a whisper. "Hey." My stomach dropped. My eyes snapped to the opposite door, the one leading into the off-limits room. The same door that had always felt wrong. And there it was again, the same figure. But now it wasn't just in the doorway. It was behind it, almost as if it had stepped through the wall itself. Its glowing red eyes locked onto mine. My body was frozen, terror rooting me in place. I couldn't look away. I couldn't breathe. But then it moved. Slowly, almost lazily, like it had all the time in the world to hunt me down. It glided toward me, no sound to its movements, like it was floating. I could feel the weight of its presence, as if the very air around me thickened with its hunger. I wasn't frozen anymore. I ran. I bolted toward the door, my fingers numb and cold as I grabbed the handle. But just as I was about to open it, I heard it. The footsteps. Slow, deliberate, and solid. Every step it took was like a drumbeat in my skull. Heavy, measured, not like a human at all. I spun around, my heart in my throat. It was right behind me. That lanky creature still shrouded in shadow, its red eyes gleaming with an unsettling light. The air around me felt suffocating, thick with the darkness that clung to it. I didn't hesitate. I ran. I burst through the door, my legs moving on pure panic, stumbling down the hall. I could hear the footsteps behind me, steady and relentless. Closer, closer. The thing was never far behind, as if it was always just a breath away. I didn't dare look back. I reached the stairs, almost tripping on the first step, but I pushed on. I couldn't stop. I had to get out. The door at the bottom of the stairs was within reach. If I could just make it there. The air grew colder. A bitter, icy wave washed over me as I reached for the door. I yanked it open, but when I did, the lights flickered again, casting an unsettling glow on everything around me. And that's when I saw it. At the top of the stairs. The thing. The creature. It was standing there, watching me. Its red eyes gleamed brighter now, and the shadows around it seemed to stretch and move, crawling toward me like hungry, twisted fingers. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The weight of its presence was suffocating. I turned and ran. I didn't care where I was going anymore. I just had to get away. I ran to Marco's house. It was supposed to be a safe place, but when I got there, I stopped dead in my tracks. The windows were smeared with blood, dark streaks running down the glass, painting the walls in a grotesque, silent warning. The lights flickered once more, then went out. The house was dead silent, but I could feel it. The thing was still there, looking. Without another thought, I turned and bolted, my legs moving on their own, carrying me through the night as the cold air clawed at my skin. My mind was a storm of panic and disbelief, questions ricocheting through my skull. Was I losing it? Had the fear driven me mad? Or was this really happening? Was that thing real? Was I imagining the blood on Marco's windows? The blood on my hands? The whole world felt like it was tilting on its axis, spinning out of control. I had to get to the police. I had to get help. But my legs felt like lead, and every corner I turned, every street I passed, the shadows seemed to close in faster, suffocating me. The sounds of my own heavy breathing were drowned out by the sound of my heart pounding in my ears. It was as if the whole world was closing in on me, the silence between each breath, a reminder that I might not make it out of this alive. I finally reached the police station, breathless and desperate, but it felt like an eternity before anyone took me seriously. My hands shook as I recounted every detail of the nightmarish chase, the dark figure, the blood, the horrible emptiness that followed it. I was sure they thought I was delusional, that the stress had finally gotten to me, but I couldn't stop talking, couldn't stop trying to make them believe me. After what felt like hours, the officers drove out to Maxim's place. I stayed behind, pacing, my nerves stretched thin. They hadn't called me back right away. They hadn't said anything for what felt like an eternity. When they finally arrived back at the station, their faces were grim, but they didn't look at me. They didn't say anything. A lead officer approached me slowly, his eyes dark. "There's nothing there," he said, his voice low and thick with something I couldn't quite place. No signs of life. No signs of struggle. I stared at him, trying to process the words. The world was spinning again, but this time it wasn't from fear, it was the crushing weight of hopelessness. "What do you mean?" "Nothing." He didn't answer right away, but I could see the answer in his eyes before he spoke again. "Just twisted remains. Bodies like they were thrown away." I felt the room tilt again. A flood of nausea hit me, but I forced myself to focus on the officer's words, trying to hold myself together. Marco. Maxim. Gone. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear through the world and demand some explanation, but the truth hung in the air, suffocating me. They were gone. It was too real. The thing, whatever it was, had taken them. And this wasn't over.